Alrighty, it's just about that time. Hey everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy, coming to you from South Korea. Yes, in case you didn't know, I retired in South Korea. Me and the wife, we sold everything in the United States, the house, the cars, the guns, the ammo, everything in the kitchen junk drawer. And we packed up a couple of suitcases. We spent some time on Oahu, great vacation, and then we came to South Korea. Ended up getting an F1 and F4 visa, and boom, here we are, just enjoying life, content with what we have. And today we're going to talk about some of the news here in Korea and what's going on, and some of the obstacles that you might face while you're here in Korea. As with any overseas country, things are going to be a little bit different in that country versus the country that you're born in. In my case, the United States. My wife was born in Korea, but then we got married and we were together. I was in the military, so we were pretty much Americanized for decades. And we had visited Korea a couple times, came back to Korea during my time in the military, but really we ended up, we ended up forgetting or not knowing how things were done in Korea. So, big learning experience, little adjustment to both of us in retiring to an overseas location, even though she's Korean and has family here and so on and so forth. Always kind of interesting. But let's dive into the news because I thought we'd hit up some of this news here. We've got some good stuff going on, so let's get right down to it. This is a big one. The heat wave is going to get more severe, the weather agency says. For those of you who don't know, in Asia and in Korea, you have the monsoon season, and then you'll have summer, which is usually July. August is usually the worst, but what we've been seeing is hotter temperatures earlier this summer than we have before, and it's supposed to get even worse. So it says the heat wave gripping the country will be more severe beginning this week, pushing up the daily maximum temperature to 37 degrees, which in American units, that's like 98 point something. And then if you throw in some humidity and how it feels temperature, we're looking at probably 100 degrees and stuff like that. So a lot of heat advisories for most of the country. I even get heat advisories on my phone, it's just pretty rough. And amid the week-long tropical nights, nighttime temperatures stay above 25 degrees. Gangneung, an East Coast city, experienced a so-called super tropical night Sunday, with temperatures dropping only to 30.8 degrees overnight, according to the KMA. And pretty wild stuff. And we're going to have to do this so we can read the rest of this. It will be recorded as the lowest daily temperature in July for Gangneung. Those previously were 30.4. The agency said the daily high will reach 37 degrees in the southeastern city of Daegu, which is usually a lot hotter. So if you're thinking about retiring to Daegu, it gets really hot there, and you might want to rethink that. Daytime temperatures will be 32 in Seoul and Busan and 34 degrees in Daejeon. That's kind of a rough one too, and 35 degrees in Gwangju. So we're getting a lot of messages on the heat that is going on in Korea. And for those of you who know me and those of you who don't, I run hot already. So the worst time of the year in Korea for me and my wife, even though she's Korean, is that hot, humid summer. So we're looking at, it's a little rough right now, but when August comes around and it's expected to stay hotter longer than usual, so we're probably looking into September, August is going to be just downright miserable. It's one of those, yesterday it ends up that the heat was 80 some odd degrees and the humidity was basically the same. The temperature and the humidity, it's like walking into a sauna when we went out of our apartment. It's just like, oof, no need for a sauna because you're living it. So if you don't have air conditioning, and there are apartment buildings around here, older apartment buildings that are like, 25, 30 years old. You see them. They're the real small ones. They don't have elevators. And during the day, you'll see apartments with their windows open and fans going and the whole 9 yards. And it is, some apartments don't have air conditioning. Those are the really, really old ones. And those, I can't imagine how that is. Living without an air conditioner, which is what we did when the wife and I got married. Originally, we lived in a house. After we got married, it wasn't a house. We rented out a room in a complex, I guess. It was kind of like a big house. You had a small common entryway, and then you had like 3 different units or whatever. So we had it was like a 1-bedroom efficiency type thing, and with a separate bathroom. Summers were terrible, and all we had was a fan. We didn't have air conditioning. Of course, that was a long, long time ago. That was like 35 years ago. But yeah, just miserable. I mean, we would go onto the military base to go to the food court to have Anthony's Pizza just to get air conditioning. I mean, that was like how bad it was. In Korea, it can get so hot and humid that it's like, it makes you miserable, and it's like, don't touch me, don't look at me, I'm miserable. And yeah, Koreans don't sweat as much as Americans. And when you see Koreans sweating and complaining, you know that it's bad. So yeah, fun stuff. The heat wave is going to get very interesting. When we talk about the heat wave, number of patients suffering heat-related illnesses spikes 83% on year. So let's see if we would make this bigger. No, we don't want that. We want this. And that's just not working out. Number of people suffering heat-related illnesses has surged more than 83% from a year early as the heat wave hit the country earlier than normal this year. The Center of Korea Disease Control and Prevention identified 875 patients, up 83.2% from the same time last year. 7 people died, presumably from a heat stroke, compared with 3 deaths last year. Earlier in the day, the weather agency issued the first heat wave warning for all of Seoul. And yeah, like I said, I get the national alerts. I get that on my phone. The wife does too, telling you don't go out if you have to, drink water, stay hydrated, all of that good stuff. So yeah, it's rough. And the heat wave issued the highest sensible temperature is expected to reach 35 degrees Celsius or higher for 2 or more consecutive days when major damage is anticipated. So you're looking in the high 90s there, about 35, 36. I think that's around 98 point something degrees. And then you throw in humidity and how it feels temperature, and you're looking into over 100 degrees. So yeah, it is crazy. And even here, what we end up seeing is that South Korea records hottest average temperature for June on record. Now, I know it's the beginning of July. This is on 4th July. Recorded the hottest average temperature for June on record as the nation hit by heat waves and tropical nights. So yeah, it is going to be a bad year, and we are definitely experiencing that. I can't imagine what it's going to be like with August coming in. And the heat is going to be absolutely insane. So the only time of year I don't like is the hot and humid summer. So July is here. It's going to get rough. It's going to be in the 90s, I think, for the rest of the week. And depending where you are, it could be worse. And then there'll be a little bit, usually it goes in waves. So you'll have a week, and then you'll have a couple days, it'll cool down. Then another, period of time where the heat will go up. But the humidity, once that comes into play, oh, good Lord, that is just rough. It is terribly rough on that. If you want to leave some comments, you can do so. I can read those, and we can pop them up on the screen. So if you have any questions about Korea and the stuff we're talking about, as long as it's Korea related, and maybe some other stuff too, go ahead. Let's just make it a discussion, a conversation. So next thing we're going to end up talking about is the economy a little bit. This is kind of interesting. Let's take a look at this, because I think this is going to be a big thing. The U.S. is going to impose 25% tariffs on all Korean products starting at 1 August, which is right around the corner. And yeah, it is absolutely crazy. We got a comment from Mark. Mark ends up saying, I was there in late June. It wasn't bad. It got bad starting July 1st. Yeah, it really got rough here. It was a doozy. So we try to do all our stuff early in the morning. And I think what we're going to end up doing, usually we go about 8:30 to go to the gym, and then we get done by 11:30, 12 o'clock, depending on, but the gym is hot, the gym is humid, and so I think we're going to roll back our gym time, and we're going to go a little bit early. We'll see if we can wake the wife up for that. See if she can get on board with that. She likes sleeping in. We're retired. We can sleep in if we want. Talking about here, 25% tariffs. That is going to be huge. So, that's pretty much it right there. That is going to end up happening 1 August. And I know in the Korean news what they're talking about is this tariff thing and how they're trying to do deals, trying to make a fair and equitable and do some negotiation. Of course, with the current administration that we have in the United States, negotiation and part of the deal, doing the deal is going to be very interesting. A lot of things have happened, and with these tariffs, what I've also seen in some articles is talking about, I think it was LG, ended up they dropped like 64% because of the tariffs and the things going on. So yeah, huge losses, and that's going to be a negotiation tactic for the United States administration to say, hey, it's more pressure. It's like, we can stop all the pain. Just let's do a deal, And I think eventually, Korea will bend its knee. I think Korea will get to a point of where it will do that because the tariffs on Korea, 25%, are going to be huge. So let's see. I want to find something out here. What tariffs does Korea put on U.S. goods? So let's see what it ends up with. This is kind of interesting. Talking about tariffs and like what Korea does. I'm just kind of doing a cursory search here. And what we end up seeing is, no, I don't want that. I want to make this bigger. So this is just a little AI thing. It talks about how there's a value-added tax of 10% on all imported goods, which, yeah, I see that. Additionally, a special excise tax raising excise tax from 10 to 20% on certain luxury and durable consumer goods. While the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement exists, South Korea still maintains tariffs on agricultural goods averaging 54%. Significantly higher than the U.S. average of 9% on similar imports. And furthermore, Korea's average tariff on non-agriculture is 6.6, and so that's a considerable amount. 54% for agricultural stuff in coming to Korea, and then the other stuff seems to be pretty good. But I think what that's going to do is the tariff is going to force Korea to drop that down because that is a little excessive. I mean, imagine that. If you're doing business and business to business and you're, for some reason, somebody who's over the border and all of a sudden they're saying, hey, well, we're going to charge you another 54%, and you're not charging them that, it's significantly less, you would be offended by that because that's just not a good thing. But the problem is the United States has had such high tariffs against it for such a long time, and it's not reciprocal. So it's like, well, why are we getting charged so much? So what I like about the current administration, and I'm an independent, just to let you know, is that it wants a more equitable and free trade. So I think we're going to see a drop in some of this stuff. And with that, excuse me, Korea does export a lot of stuff to the United States. And I think it's just a matter of time before a deal is done. If not, We've already seen fallout with LG, I think SK, and there's some other company. But they're experiencing some losses because of tariffs and stuff like this. So when 1 August rolls around, it's going to be very interesting to see how that is being handled. With that, talking about the economy, housing prices. I get the question, because we bought our apartment here in Korea. A lot of people that are interested in being expats have said, hey, when I get there, should I buy an apartment? And it's like, generally, I would say no. I would say if you haven't been back to Korea in a long time and you and your spouse haven't come together and made a decision in regards to where you want to live, just rent, okay? Go to different places, go to the coast, go to Seoul, terribly expensive, some parts, a lot of parts. We're here close to Pyeongtaek. We're actually in Paensongop, which is close to Camp Humphreys, Korea. You have Osan, you have Songtan, you have all types of different areas that you could even live out in the sticks somewhere. So until you're both 100% convinced that you want to buy in a certain area, I suggest you go ahead and rent. With that being said, when we're talking about housing, this is an interesting little thing that we have here. Apartment sales plunged 64% as loan restrictions take hold. So housing in Seoul is usually way, way expensive. And it's, I just read articles a few days ago talking about the expenses for housing and sales. Seoul just keeps going up and up and up. And basically, people are being priced out of that. And now there is a mortgage cap of 600 million won freezes housing market within 1 week. But experts warn of Jeonse price surge. So that's a system of where you take a huge deposit, and with the cap on buying apartments, you're going to see people that are going to, the knee-jerk reaction is to raise the price in this Jeonse price surge, which means that if you're going to rent in that type of thing, use that type of rental option, you're going to put a huge down payment down, and that is going to go up. So that's going to hurt some people, and generally people have to save up that money. So when people wonder why in Asian countries, and sometimes in Korea, you'll see, a husband and wife, their parents might be there, you might have some other siblings living together. Of course, Korea is a real unit, family-oriented society, which is really good. That's like the exact opposite of how I was raised. We had a dysfunctional family unit, and it was just crazy. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this goes. Apartment transactions in Seoul dropped more than 64% in 1 week after the Korean government announced strict real estate loan regulations on 27 June. According to an analysis by real estate researcher, it ended up that apartment deals in Seoul have nearly come to a halt. More than 300 contracts were canceled despite financial penalty of returning double the deposit. That is huge. It's kind of like putting money down on a property, to hold the property. Apartment construction starts is going down. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. So with that, since there's not going to be a lot of new apartments, then you should have an increase in demand, and so that's going to drive up prices. But then the prices have dropped because of loan restrictions. So yeah, it's a real confusing time, especially up in Seoul. Real estate experts are skeptical that the freeze in listings will lead to lower home prices. Instead, they point to a deepening housing shortage. Again, that's kind of what we ended up saying. Not only in apartments, but also villas. The tightening supply is expected to drive up Jeonse prices the second half of the year. Between 27 July and 3 July, only 557 apartment transactions were recorded in Seoul, down from 64% the previous week, which was 1629. That is a huge drop. That is a huge drop because usually during the right after spring and then summer it's kind of like the United States. You buy your properties during the summer months generally, and sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit into the fall. But yeah, it's kind of like the United States. In Songpa, transactions dropped from 24 to just 1. Socho fell from 15 to 1, Gangnam from 76 to 24. Demand weakened in the surrounding districts as well. In Mapo, which is where that Johnny Somali idiot did some crimes. Transactions fell from 89 to 29 in Songdong, 93 to 43. And yeah, interesting. So, wow. Contract cancellations have also surged. According 301 apartment deals were canceled, and where the new loan rules would not apply to the existing contracts. I find that disingenuous. If you already have a contract, you should have been grandfathered in, but that's just my opinion. It doesn't really mean much, does it? Many buyers who plan to cover final payments using Jeonsei deposits were unable to secure funds and backed out of the deals. So yeah, we're going to see kind of a dip in apartment completions from 2025 to 2027, and that's gonna pop up some demand. While the market is temporarily cooled, growing concerns around Seoul's declining housing supply. Next year, only 28,353 new apartments are expected to be completed, down almost 40% from this year's units. In 2026, completions will fall further to just 8,803, an 81.2% drop. Wow, that's crazy. Construction starts, which predicts supply 3 or 4 years ahead, has dropped a huge amount, 52,000 to 20,000. So yeah, more than half. Supplying affordable housing such as multifamily and row houses, popular among low-income residents, have also fallen due to fallout from the Jeonsei fraud cases. These homes saw more than 20,000 completions annually in 21 and 22, but dropped 14,000 in 23 and only 6,500 in 2024. And so, yeah, it is, the Jeonsei supply is shrinking as well, and so that's going to cause a high demand, which is the prices are going to go up. Again, real estate is real estate no matter where you go. So doing the real estate deals that we did in the United States and seeing what's going on here, it's very, very interesting. So, such a steep decline, some experts warn that the government's loan restrictions could cause the Jeonsei prices to soar. Because Jeonsei contracts are typically renewed every 2 years, controlling demand is difficult. In particular, tighter limits on Jeonsei loan financing for tenants in newly built apartments are expected to push more renters towards older apartments and villas. So if you cut off this supply, they're going to go down to the next level, and those are going to be in more demand. That is going to reduce the supply of those as well. So yeah, as Jeonsei prices rise, more people will shift to monthly rents, which could increase overall housing costs. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing that we got there with this economy, and especially with the government and the tariff situation that we have. Korea is trying to bounce back. The economy's not doing well. The exchange rate is around 1350-ish. I think that's the last time. And probably the normal exchange rate for US dollar to won would be, I think, just based off the articles that I've read and my experience here in Korea, would probably be about 1100 won to the dollar. 1150 would probably be a good place, because that means you're kind of even with the United States. Everything is kind of good. I think the tariffs will help in that aspect. If Korea agrees to the U.S. tariffs, it'll lighten the load and the exchange rate will go down, which will be bad for us, but it'll be good for the people of Korea. So either way, it's going to work out in the end. If there is no tariff deal, then what we'll probably see is higher exchange rates from US dollar to won, which will be better for us, but bad for the Korean economy. And remember, back when there was I'm trying to think. When did the IMF, not the Mission Impossible Force, whatever that is, but the IMF did their loan to Korea was 97, 98-ish, and the exchange rate was, I want to say, about 14 something, almost 1500 won to the dollar. And I think if Korea keeps going, if they reject the tariff deal for the U.S. administration, the current administration, I think it's going to lead to a worse economy. But another problem is that the South Korean government, it was in the 90s. I want to say it was mid 90s, maybe 97-ish, somewhere around there. It was when the IMF and the loan to bail out Korea. If the Korean economy gets worse and we get up to that 14 or 1500 won level, which some Korean economists are expecting and projecting, again, take that with a grain of salt. Korean weather experts, it's going to rain tomorrow for the next 3 days, and it doesn't. So much for projecting. But with that, I think if the economy gets worse, we're going to see 1,400 won to the dollar. We're going to be heading around there. But another problem is that the current administration here in Korea is like, we're going to give money away. We're going to print money and we're going to give money away. They're going to be giving loan forgiveness for people that have, I think it was like $36,000 worth of loans, that people that haven't paid on them for the last 7 years, they will get those written off. That's good on one hand because the people that haven't been able to pay their loans, which they shouldn't have taken those loans to begin with, but I get it. Having gone through bankruptcy and foreclosure, I totally understand you can get screwed without you doing the screwing. Somebody screwed you. But with that, on the other side of the coin, you have a bunch of Koreans that said, well, hey, we took loans and we paid them back. Why do they get a pass and we don't? So again, the problem with handing out free money is not only the equity of the thing, but the problem is you can't borrow your way into financial wealth. You can't borrow and go into debt and strengthen the economy. It will be a small momentary blip on the screen, and we're going to take a look at that. And so they're looking at getting rid of those loans if somebody has a loan for that. But what I found is by reading more into that, it's not just one loan. You could have multiple $36,000 loans and get those written off, which is, okay, now we're getting to a place that I could see where you write off some loans, maybe, for whatever reason. I don't agree with the government paying those things off. You signed a legally binding contract, you're done. Claim bankruptcy, foreclosure, there's, like we have in the United States, I get that. But for the government to pay those off is really inefficient. Anytime the government steps in to pay off stuff like that, the government has to make money. They have to create the money. So they borrow to create the money to do this stuff. And usually what you end up seeing, and I base this off my time in the United States and in Korea, is that it's not really a good thing because you have to have interest on the money that you're buying. You have to go into debt. So the government debt is going to increase. And it's just kicking the can down the road, which is not what we want. The other thing that they're going to do here in Korea is that this administration wants to do, besides paying off debts, and we're going to get to that next part. Pat ends up, welcome Pat, and it says they could lower interest rates. Yes, that would be a thing. That would probably make more sense because then you have less money going out as interest, and so you have essentially more take-home pay, and then that more take-home pay would result in more money, being spent out on the economy, which have a good rise in the economy, or a profitable rise in the economy. We've seen this in the United States and other countries as well. So yeah, I totally agree with Pat. It would make more sense to lower the interest rates. But the fact that the current administration wants to jump in and pay for those things is only going to add more debt to the Korean economy, to the Korean government, which is going to increase the taxes. It's going to increase the interest rates of Korea borrowing money and paying it back, and so on and so forth. It's just not an efficient way of doing things. I would much rather see a more a system where you could do like bankruptcy and foreclosure, and where businesses could buy those properties or whatever, buy the loans or whatever, and especially if something that has real assets. But if you have a loan where there's no assets attached to that, good luck trying to collect on that. It goes into collections or whatever. I don't know how that is here in Korea, but it can be pretty oppressive here in Korea. If you don't pay your loans, yeah, that is like the scarlet letter here in Korea, and that can follow families for a long, long time, a terribly long time. The other thing the current administration is going to do here in Korea is they're going to hand out cash. Yeah, we heard that in the United States. Oh, I'm going to give money to everybody. It didn't work out well, and it's only a blip on the screen, but they want to do that here in Korea. So basically, what the new Korean president wants to do is give everybody about 150,000 won, which is like 100 or so bucks, and it'll be great for the economy. But again, you have to borrow the money to do that, to hand that out, and it'll just be a little blip up. People spend money, and then the next month, it's going to go back to where it is. So any profit or rise in the economy, look how good our economy's doing, it's going to go back down. I don't see what is going to happen with that. Now, the interesting thing is, what about foreigners who are residing in Korea that are on visas, work visas, and so on and so forth? Are they going to get that money as well? This is another thing that has popped up, and you have Koreans that say, well, they're not Korean citizens. Why should they get this money? That doesn't make sense. It makes a lot of Koreans mad. And for me personally, I would be mad too. I totally get it. Why should you get money if you're not a Korean citizen, even though I think giving this money away is a bad idea to begin with? I don't agree with it either. So let's take a look at this. Foreigners, who gets Korea's cash handouts? Rules for foreign residents explained. You're a permanent resident covered by national health insurance system. Check the detailed criteria. You may be eligible for 150,000 won. So this is predicated on the fact that you have the Korean national health insurance. I don't have that. I have TRICARE Overseas Select, which is in lieu of and accepted by the Korean government. So I might miss out on this. Foreign residents living in Korea eligible to help revive consumer spending and bolster household income. Again, it's only going to be a one-time payment. So it's not really going to do anything for the economy. It's not going to strengthen and bolster, the economy. Backed by supplementary budget of 23.3 billion, the program offers a one-time payment of at least 150,000 won to all Korean residents as of 18 June. It is a consumption coupon to stimulate sluggish spending to revitalize the local economy and support Korean incomes. But again, you're just doing a one-time payment, so really what's that going to do? Not much. $150, $110, $100. What can you do with $100? Go out to dinner, buy some groceries, and you're done. It's not going to work out like they think it is. Anyway, there are some exceptions for foreigners. Foreign nationals may qualify if they're listed on the same household registration as with at least one Korean and enrolled in the national health care system, either a subscriber or dependent, or if they receive medical aid. They may also apply if there are permanent residents with an F5 visa, and the F513 visa is one of those. Marriage immigrants with the F6 visa, so there's that, or recognized refugees with the F2-4 visa, and are covered by national health insurance. So pretty much there's different categories, but as long as you have the national health insurance, then you could qualify for this. Korean citizens who have been staying abroad can also receive the payment if they return to Korea between 18 June and 12 September to verify their entry records. The second rollout of the subsidy program is planned for September, with 90% of all Koreans eligible to receive a fixed payment of 100,000 won based on income and asset levels. For foreign nationals and refugees, the same criteria applies as the first. So really what we're going to see is this temporary income boost of 110 bucks pretty soon, and then in September we'll see it again. It's a paper it's a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound. It's just not going to go well. Coupons can be used at local small businesses with annual revenue under 3 billion won, traditional markets, neighborhood supermarkets, restaurants, barber shops, beauty salons. They cannot be used. They cannot be used at major discount chains, department stores, duty-free shops, or directly operated franchise outlets. So yeah, it's going to focus these things on smaller businesses. Application of distribution will continue for 8 weeks through September 12th. Payments will be issued via credit or debit cards, prepaid cards, or local government issued gift checks. Money can be used until 30 November. Any unused balance after that date will be returned to the government. Yeah, I don't think this is a good idea, in my opinion. You need to have real economic growth to get economic growth. You can't borrow your way and say, "Oh, we're going to give you $100 now, go spend it," and then turn around and say, "Oh, look at our economy. It's gotten so much better." It's not like crack or meth. You'll have drug dealers that'll say, "Here, take a head of this meth, and the first one's free," and then they're hooked for life, right? When you give a one-time $100. People are going to go get their hair done. They're going to get their nails. They're going to go to the barber shop. They're going to buy some food at the local market. $100 in Korean won, 150,000 won. That's not much. So you'll do a couple of things. You'll frequent a couple of businesses, and that's going to be it. But that's not going to translate into long-term profits or a strong economy. It's just going to be a little blip. But the current administration, I think, is hoping that will trick people into, like the analogy of the first meth hit is free, and then they're thinking people will just, "Oh, well, I spent 150,000 won this week. Thank you, Korean government. So I'm going to continue spending money that I don't have after that." No, I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. And one thing we're going to take a look at is, it's just, oh man. Oh, and here's the thing. I was just going to get into this. Pat said people will spend that money and drive up inflation, which is absolutely true because you have a certain amount of income or money within the system, and when you create more money, that devalues the currency that you're operating in this case, the Korean won. And what it'll end up is it'll drive up inflation as well because there's more money. So if you do some research and the Weimar Republic and all of that and the Depression and when inflation went crazy, we still have an inflationary economy here in Korea, which is bothersome because that's still fueled by the war in Ukraine, which is driving up prices because there's a lot of stuff going on there. But if the war in Ukraine would stop, that would help a lot. But printing money and putting that huge influx of cash into your monetary system is going to devalue. And like Pat said, it can drive up inflation. And the economy that we have now in Korea, amidst the trade wars and tariffs and things like that, it's just not doing well. And so we've got this weird reaction here in Korea. Let's tighten up on the loans, and the housing market is kind of crashing a little bit. Not a lot of sales. Apartments are not being built. People are pulling out of deals because of that knee-jerk reaction, and because people can't afford it. And when you cut off the ability for people to get loans, that's going to have an effect on your economy, and it's going to go down. So for some reason, this current administration is focused on let's give money. Let's just give people money, and that'll fix it. That'll spur people on to spending more. And it's like, for me, for reasonable people, even my Korean wife and her family, it's like, you get more money, you spend it, and then the next month, you're not going to keep spending money that you don't have. You're more and more people here in Korea are looking at secondhand stores, which wasn't really a thing back in the day. If you went to a secondhand store, you were poor, and that was, bad. It's always keeping up with the Kims here in Korea. Get the new phone, the new clothes, the new car, the new apartment, and so on and so forth. Retirement be damned. We'll figure that out when we get there. Live your best life now, and you only live once. So, but the problem is people are finding out with the increase in housing and jobs are kind of down low that a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm not going to be spending that much money. So yeah, it's going to be very problematic for the time being. Pat ends up saying, sounds like Korea has a liberal government at the moment. Oh, yes, it does. And not a lot of people are enjoying it, which is a great segue into the last article we're going to take a look at. South Korea's recovery needs strategy, not cash handouts. And I totally agree with this guy. And this guy is bringing the numbers. President Lee Jae-myung's administration set a supplementary budget of 20 trillion won and will include support for emerging industries and constructions, more than half, 13.2. So I can kind of agree with that. It should be in the form of tax write-offs or lower interest rates, like Pat was saying, will be spent on direct cash payments of 150 to 500,000 won per person. It's time to use public funds. But where are those public funds coming from? Taxpayers. So do you want high taxes? I don't know. I don't. Emphasizing that while fiscal responsibility matters, the economic downturn is too severe to delay government intervention. The problem is with the government intervention is this part right here. As this guy points out, the problem lies in how the funds are being spent. According to the Bank of Korea, the economic multiplier for cash handouts is 0.33. So in other words, it's not that efficient. Whenever the government gets involved in handing out money, it is woefully inefficient and not as profitable as they think it will be. But it's for the children. It's for, this means that spending 1 trillion won results in a mere 330 billion won increase in the GDP. In comparison, investment in infrastructure such as roads, ports, yields a multiplier of 0.86. In other words, public spending that creates future value is far more effective than a broad cash distribution. What are the odds? Even when providing direct support, targeting low-income houses is far more efficient. These groups are likely to spend the money which helps stimulate consumption. However, only 1.5 trillion won, or 11.4% of the budget, is designated for the basic or near poverty income brackets. So, even a greater concern is the worsening financial situation. The entire 20 trillion won budget will be financed through borrowing. Again, they're borrowing money to make money. As a result, the national debt is expected to reach 1,300 trillion won by the end of the year, up 105 trillion won from a year ago. The debt to GDP ratio will rise to 49%, approaching the government's self-imposed limit of 50%. If the pace of debt increase is not controlled, this administration could be the first push to increase the national debt ratio more than 50%. Global credit ratings agencies have repeatedly warned that continued rise in public debt may harm South Korea's rating. The country has already experienced a fallout in the downturn in the credit downgrade during the 1997 financial crisis, which is when we had the IMF bailout. So it was 1997. I got to remember that, 1997. Even though the supplementary budget may have been unavoidable, it must be paired with clear plan to restore fiscal soundness. Even if cash support is provided, it should be strictly limited to low-income groups. Without such focus, and then he goes on. It's gonna get rough, and I think what we're seeing is we could see the global rating, kind of like the credit rating of Korea, could end up, not doing well. When you look at the United States and what the United States did for so long with government debt and increase in personal debt, the only reason that we're able to make it is because of the confidence of the U.S. dollar being the world reserve currency. If the dollar ever goes away from being the world reserve currency, where petroleum and gas and oil and all those things are bought and sold with U.S. dollars, it's going to be done. So there's nothing holding up the dollar besides the confidence in the dollar itself. And because we are a consumer nation, we do have some power, like what Trump is doing now, saying, hey, all of these unfair tariffs on the United States, we're going to put tariffs on you, and if you don't lower yours, we're going to, you can't have people like China that are producers, the number one producers in the world, if they don't have customers. And if the customers say, we're not buying, people lose jobs, they lose money. It's this weird symbiotic relationship that we have in the world with countries. But with this, when you start getting to the credit ratings, that means higher interest rates for industries. That means higher interest rates for governments borrowing so that they can create more money. And again, the inflationary warnings that are coming out, the increase in personal debt because of the bad economy, the inflation due to the war in Ukraine that is still going on. That is crazy. But, what do you do? This is going to be a hard road for Korea to overcome. So with that being said, my heart goes out to the Koreans that are working and having a hard time making ends meet. But then it's good for us because when we exchange our US dollars for won, we're getting a great exchange rate. Personally, I would, as much as I enjoy that, I would rather not have that than seeing the Korean people suffer. But yeah, you can't buy your way into economic health. It just doesn't work. It'll be a little blip on the screen, and unless you somehow get some magician on stage and hypnotize people to just keep spending money that they don't have, now the government's spending money that they don't have, and how is that going to work out? Bring it down to the micro level of your budget at home. If you spend money that you don't have and you keep getting loans, eventually you're not going to be able to pay back those loans. Sure, you can refinance them, you can roll them up into one bigger loan, you're going to pay some more money, but eventually it's going to come to the place where you're not going to be able to get any more loans. And unless you curb your spending habit and become more financially responsible, it'll go bad for you. And so when we expound that out to a big level, such as the Korean government or the United States or any other country, if you do the same thing, it's going to end up in more debt. You can't go into debt yourself into prosperity. You can't buy prosperity through debt. It's impossible. It has to be through the increase of goods and services being produced. Those things are being exported into other countries. One way to do it is, like Pat was saying, is that you lower the interest rates so people have more take-home pay, which is more of a long-term solution. But this current administration here in Korea seems real liberal in their ideas. And while I'm an independent, I like good ideas from both sides. I don't think this is the right way to go. I think it's just kind of grabbing the attention and, free money, yay. But I think a lot of people don't understand the economics and how that works. And it's just, I think this is going to be, it's going to be hard on business and industry and housing. And then it's just going to have this trickle down effect where it's going to hit the working class people and the everyday people. So that is going to be very interesting. So anyway, with that being said, today is the dentist day. Yeah, I hate going. This is a freebie. I hate going to the dentist in the United States, but here in Korea, I have found awesome dental care. Of course, you got to search for it. You got to find a dentist that's got good reviews. But yeah, I had a lot of dental work done that I had to pay out of pocket. I had like 4 implants. I had like 5 or 6 crowns and some other stuff done, and it ended up being like $5,300 USD. Which is crazy because I've had people tell me that to get 1 implant in the United States, it's like $2,500 or $3,000 or $3,500, I think was the top end for an implant. So yeah, but it's just a checkup to see how things are doing. I'm brushing my teeth. I'm doing the water flossing thing. So we're going to do that. The wife's going to get her teeth checked out as well. So with that, I got to get some breakfast, got to brush the teeth and do that, and we'll continue on. So we're going to close out this video, and with that being said, we got an alibi. We got an alibi from Pat. May have some needed may have needed some crowns, so much cheaper in Korea and quality was better. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Uh, great. Pat says, oh, my wife. Oh, your wife needed. Okay. My wife needed some crowns, so much cheaper in Korea and quality is much better. Oh, yeah, definitely. And way cheaper, better service. The best dental experience that I've ever had has been here in Korea. So with that, I get to go back to the dentist and get checked out. If you want to contact me, there's the email address down below right there. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I'm no longer on Facebook because of some crazy stuff. Because I reported and read news like I did that is public information, Facebook didn't like it because there was some crime stuff and keywords got flagged and boom, my account was gone. So we're going to see how that goes. And right now I don't have a Facebook account. I'm going to check out Rumble. I'm on MeWe, MeWe, which is very provincial. There's barely anybody on that thing. So I don't know how much I'll be engaged on that. So I'm going to try out Rumble and see how that works. I don't know, look at some different options. So with that, as Pat says, stay cool over there. Stay cool where you're at as well. And that's the plan for today. Again, like and subscribe. If you want to do me a solid, you can buy me a coffee, and that's what the scrolling ticker is. A bunch of people who bought me coffee, and I really appreciate it. I have much respect for those people, and you can be on that list too. So with that being said, we'll let you all go. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot me an email. I 100% answer all of my emails. And if you have an idea for a video or if you have questions, just go to it. Shoot me an email and we'll do a video. And I think that's going to be it. So I'm going to finish up my latte and get on, and we will see you on the next video. Thanks, everybody. Peace. Good stuff.